Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Connor. I'm a science fiction, political, and philosophy nerd, a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran, and a never Trump Republican. I like breaking down the alternative media debate scene and news and political commentary scene, and I have a treat for you. Cenk Uygur, I was looking actually for an Anakasparian segment, but both of those people are members of the Young Turks, a progressive show. They have recently been accused of pandering to the right and therefore losing some of their progressive roots, and let's face it, losing some of their progressive audience. Cenk Uygur had an interesting segment where he is screaming about Islamophobia in the media, which is interesting because currently we're in like a anti-Semitic, an anti-Semitic spree of hatred towards Jews. So, I kind of wanted to check this out, see what's going on, see what Mr. Cenk Uygur has for us. And I'm just going to let him speak for himself. Viewer be warned, it's going to be very passionate.
Yes, Muslim lives matter. I'm so sick of our lives not mattering. And American media, you are guilty. You're the ones who got the whole country, my whole life, to hate me, to hate my Muslim family, to hate all Muslims across the world. You're the sick sons of bitches that called us terrorists. Does my life matter? Does my life matter? Does my family's life matter?
So Konstantin Kisin today referred to me as woke after I talked about the difficulty in engaging in polite conversation and debate with
Philip Coffee for 20, thank you, King, says, Steam sale started today, have some of my savings. Thank you, Philip. Thank you very much. Very appreciated.
the man who has a smirk on his face as I talk about the slaughter of innocent people in Gaza.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna rewind a little bit because this is the Anakasparian spurg out that it made a segment unwatchable. It actually gave me a migraine. So let's see the way that she characterizes it.
About the difficulty in engaging in polite conversation and debate with a man who has a smirk on his face as I talk about the slaughter of innocent people in Gaza. And that man was Conricus, I forget his first name, don't care about his first name, but unfortunately I had the displeasure of having to debate him on Piers Morgan's show. Jonathan Conricus, okay. So how is that woke? He quote tweets that. I say polite debates with men who smirk as I bring up the slaughter of innocents is nonsensical. He says woke is so back, baby.
Yeah, no, Anna, of course, being anti-genocide is woke. Like the non-woke position is genocide and Holocaust are awesome, which I'm sure Konstantin Kisin agrees with because he just said it. He just said that being against the genocide is woke. So he's
No, that's not what's going on. That's not what's going on. Okay, so let's go ahead and break this down for a few folks. So Muslim lives matter. I agree. I think that there are 7 billion people on the planet. There's 3 or 4 Abrahamic faiths, depending on how you want to characterize it. There's a whole bunch of subsects of those Abrahamic faiths. And I think that Muslim people are just like me. They wake up, they put on their pants and or their various, whatever the typical Saudi garb is. I forget what you would call it. But they put that on, they go to work, they eat food, they work, they go home, they pay their bills, they pay their taxes, they take care of their family, they take care of their communities, right? That's most Muslims. That's probably 99% of Muslims. However, I think in the Western world, the reason why there is antipathy or apathy about Muslims, the people, right, is because it seems like there's a jihadist problem. And what I mean by a jihadist problem are there are people who cloak themselves within religion and they use religion and geopolitical grievance as a pretext with which to slaughter civilians. And what's interesting about this is that, Cenk Uygur just said, you're treating us like our lives don't matter. And it's like, well, when you're in the West, most people try to treat you as like a co-citizen working towards the betterment of humanity and all that kind of stuff. But when you're in the Middle East and North Africa, there's so many like tribal, random geopolitical alliances that it's not even Western forces that are killing the crap out of Muslims. It's other rival Islamist and jihadist terrorist organizations. As an example, I brought up the Iraqi body count project multiple times on this stream. it shows that during the Iraq War, 80 to 90% of the casualties inflicted in that conflict were caused by jihadist militias. So that's the thing that I would say is, I don't know if American media is the one propagandizing that and then it happens, or if that's just the way things are and they're reflecting reality back to you. Then Konstantin Kisin, if I had to steelman him, is not criticizing Anna for, you know, freaking out on Conricus or whatever. That's my criticism. Or actually, that is the criticism, is that we couldn't have a real conversation about what's going on in Gaza and what's going on in Iran because Anna just freaked out on a panel. So, yeah, I don't think that Kisin is pro-genocide.
Not woke. He probably loves genocides and Holocaust.
So let me understand something. If I decided to quote tweet him on October 7th when Hamas slaughtered innocents in Israel and claimed that his complaints about that was woke, would that be okay? Of course it wouldn't be okay, right?
No, that's against Israel, so you better watch yourself.
Because innocent people, civilians, should be and must be protected. I look at Israeli civilians as human beings, and when they are targeted the way Hamas targeted them on October 7th, it's freaking disgusting. Anyone justifying it should absolutely be condemned. But for some reason, the humanity of the Palestinian people doesn't matter at all. They just openly mock the idea that anyone would be upset at the slaughter of innocent people. Okay.
No, they think that you're mischaracterizing it, okay? So as an example, this is the story that came out of Gaza in the past 24 to 48 hours, is that the IDF set up food distribution checkpoints. Civilians came in to the food distribution checkpoints, and then for no reason and unprovoked, IDF soldiers started gunning down civilians. Okay, that's the narrative. So what I want to see, because that was Anna's narrative, is I want to see evidence of this. Because in the age of social media, where everybody has a cell phone, where everybody, even people in Gaza have cell phones, they have video cameras, they have the capacity to take pictures. I don't just want to take the word of random people in a war zone about what's happening. I want to see it. So if you want to show me IDF soldiers laughing as you have like little starving civilians walking up to a food checkpoint and them gunning them down, I'm happy. I'm not happy to watch it, but I'm happy to review the evidence and see if I side with you and say that the IDF is evil and deserves to be effectively dragged before an international criminal court. I'm happy to review that evidence. However, if you're just going to state that that's happening and then freak out about it, then no, like I'm not going to, I'll go ahead for the sake of trying to steelman Anna. I'll go ahead and try to research it on stream while I let them talk.
Okay.
Because
I see who you are, Constantine. I see who you are.
Yeah.
Wow.
Look, we think Israeli civilians and Palestinian civilians are the same. They're both human beings and their lives should be protected.
And by the way, this is like already an extremely moderate position compared to, let's say, Hassan Piker, this dude's nephew, who thinks that like Israeli settlers, like even if they're kids, you can just kill them because they're valid military targets.
They don't believe that. They think Palestinian civilians are to be murdered by the IDF under the guise of self-defense. Oh, I had to murder 17,000 children because Hamas made me do it. And I was defending myself against 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds. And by the way, that's why 100 American doctors came back from Gaza and said, wow, we saw an extraordinary number of headshots on children as young as 3 and 5. Snipers shooting children in the head because of self-defense. But to people like Constantine, Palestinian lives, Iranian lives, etc., they're nothing. Because they're inferior to the Israelis.
Listen, I know
the Israelis are superior to all of us. So how dare we complain when our superiors are in the room?
I know it's really difficult for the Israeli government and the defenders of.
This is So basically, they're claiming that Konstantin Kisin and anybody who's like a Zio shill is effectively an Israeli supremacist, and there are people like that. I'm not going to lie. There's like freaks. There's freaks on the right who are, you know, like Ted Cruz, right? We saw Ted Cruz say like, oh yeah, well, you know, I read in the Bible that those who bless Israel will be blessed by God, and then he didn't know what the passage was. There are people like that for sure. let's go ahead and see. Obviously, I'm presuming this is going to be a little bit biased, but we're all biased here, right? I'm a Zio shill. They're a Palestinian shill. Let's take a look at what's actually going on according to people who are researching the topic. Israeli soldiers killed at least 410 people at food aid sites in Gaza this month. Israeli soldiers and officers have said they were ordered to shoot at unarmed civilians waiting for food in Gaza. Okay, that sounds pretty stinking bad. So let's see the quotes and the evidence. The Israeli military has killed at least 410 people trying to get food at Israeli-run aid sites in the past month. This constitutes a likely war crime that violates international standards on aid distribution. Desperate, hungry people in Gaza continue to face the inhumane choice of either starving to death or risk being killed while trying to get food, the UN Human Rights Office said. Palestinian health authorities reported that Israel killed 44 people waiting for aid in separate incidents in southern and central Gaza just on Tuesday this week. Israeli soldiers have reportedly killed aid seekers with bullets, tank shells, and drone-mounted weapons. Okay. Link. Israeli officers said they were ordered to deliberately fire at unarmed civilians waiting for humanitarian aid in an investigation published by the Israeli newspaper Haaretz on Friday. All right, so we'll read that in a second. The Israeli military has said reports about casualties at aid sites have prompted thorough examinations in the Southern Command and that instructions were issued to forces in the field following lessons learned. The aforementioned incidents are under review by the competent authorities, an unnamed spokesperson for the Israeli military said in a statement emailed to The Intercept. The aid distribution sites are run by Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a nonprofit formed earlier this year for the purpose of distributing aid in collaboration with the Israeli government and American private military and security companies under a plan created by the U.S. and Israeli governments. All right, so I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to review the Haaretz article that substantiates killing civilians. I'm going to explain this to you and see if I can make this make sense. So, when we're talking about Israel and Gaza, in Gaza, the current government is Hamas, which is the same terrorist organization that carried out the October 7th, 2023 terrorist attacks. And they haven't surrendered, to my knowledge. They are still engaged in asymmetric warfare against Israel. And so just a couple of days ago, I watched a Hamas fighter take a IED and throw it into an Israeli APC and blow up 5 Israeli soldiers. Okay. So they don't just want to give food to Hamas, because what Hamas will do is they'll keep the food for themselves, they'll starve their rivals, and they'll feed their friends. That's what they'll do. That's what happens in any of these warlord situations. That's what happened in Somalia, right? So they want to make sure that the food actually gets to the civilians. Well, in order to make sure that it actually gets to the civilians, the IDF is setting up choke points or checkpoints where they actually do handle the food distribution. They sit there with guns and they make sure that civilians get in a line up, walk up, get a ration of food, and then leave. That's their job. That's their goal. And if there's, Hamas forces that try to infiltrate in order to do a suicide bombing or a shooting attack or anything like that in the crowd, then of course they're going to have to engage that crowd. The accusation from Anakasparian in a panel that we previously watched, and the accusation from that article, is that the IDF soldiers are chilling. They're hanging out there at the food aid station. They're just waiting for something to pop off. They look at some starving Gazans and they just gun them down for fun. That's the accusation. So let's see if there's evidence to corroborate that accusation. It's a killing field. IDF soldiers ordered to shoot deliberately at unarmed Gazans waiting for humanitarian aid. IDF officers and soldiers told Haaretz they were ordered to fire at unarmed crowds near food distribution sites in Gaza, even when no threat was present. Hundreds of Palestinians have been killed, prompting the military prosecution to call for a review of its possible war crimes. Okay, that sounds pretty stinking bad. Only for $1 a month live coverage. It's paywalled. Awesome. Thanks, Haaretz. Already signed up, log in, or register to get up to 6 articles per month. I'll go ahead and register. Let me go ahead and go over here and register. We'll do that. We're not going to let a paywall defeat us today, okay? Counterpointsconnor@gmail.com. Log in. New password. Please enter my first name. Please enter my last name. I agree to the terms and conditions. Sign up. All right. Cool. Let's read this one. All right. We defeated the paywall. Good job, Connor. Good job, chat. We defeated the paywall. Yep. There we go. All right. Israeli soldiers in Gaza told Haaretz that the army has deliberately fired at Palestinians near aid distribution sites over the past month. Conversations with officers and soldiers reveal the commanders ordered the troops to shoot at crowds to drive them away or disperse them, even though it was clear they posed no threat. One soldier described the situation as a total breakdown of the IDF's ethical codes in Gaza. According to the Hamas-run health ministry, 549 people have been killed near aid centers and where residents waited for UN food trucks May 27th. Over 4,000 people have been wounded, but the exact number of those killed or injured by the IDF fire remains unclear. Haaretz has learned that the military advocate general has instructed the IDF General Staff's fact-finding assessment mechanism, a body tasked with reviewing incidents involving potential violations of laws of war to investigate suspected war crimes. That detail is going to be important, so I hope they're not burying the lead. The distribution centers typically open for just 1 hour each morning. I think that's fucked up. According to officers and soldiers who served in their area, the IDF fires at people who arrive before opening hours to prevent them from approaching, or again after the centers close to disperse them. Since some of the shooting incidents occurred at night ahead of the opening, it's possible that some civilians couldn't see the boundaries of the designated areas. It's a killing field, one soldier said. Where I was stationed, between 1 and 5 people were killed every day. They're treated like a hostile force. No crowd control measures, no tear gas, just live fire with everything imaginable. Heavy machine guns, grenade launchers, mortars. Then once the center opens, the shooting stops and they know they can approach. Our form of communication is gunfire. Yeah, that's obviously super fucked up. That's like crazy fucked up. If this is corroborated by other witnesses, or video evidence, then yeah, that's IDF is fucked up. Crazy fucked up. The soldier added, we open fire early in the morning if someone tries to get in line from a few hundred meters away, and sometimes we just charge at them from close range, but there's no danger to the forces, according to him. No danger to the forces seems weird, but that's okay. I'm not aware of a single instance of return fire. There's no enemy, no weapons. He also said the activity in his area of service is referred to as Operation Salted Fish, the name of the Israeli version of the children's game Red Light, Green Light. Jesus Christ. IDF officers told Haaretz that the army does not allow the public in Israel or abroad to see footage of what takes place around the food distribution sites. According to them, the army is satisfied that the GHF's operations have prevented a total collapse of international legitimacy for continuing the war. They believe the IDF has managed to turn Gaza into a backyard, especially since the war with Iran began. Okay, listen, if this is the attitude of Israel, that they can basically do whatever the fuck they want because nobody gives a shit about Gaza, then yeah, I'm okay with Cenk spurging out. I'm okay with Cenk spurging out. Absolutely. 100%. I'm good with it. I'm going to be less critical. I'm going to be less critical of Chank and Anna freaking out. Because if I heard that and it was corroborated by Haaretz, which is an Israeli newspaper, and they found a IDF soldier who he himself thought it was fucked up, of course you want to trust but verify all the data, but I'm okay with them freaking out based off of that information.
The current IDF, to hear about what they really are, to hear the truth about who they really are. They're genociders. They revel in the slaughter of innocent people, including children. They're literally shooting and killing Palestinians, including kids, as they're trying to get aid at these humanitarian aid hubs in Gaza. And then they turn around and say, oh, that's just Hamas propaganda, except investigations show that the bullets and weapons are consistent with the weapons that the IDF has. In fact, CNN did one of those investigations.
Of course, the IDF is a bunch of murderers.
Dozens
The reason
of
they're running,
kids
I'm sorry, hold on.
daily.
The reason they're running the food centers and they stopped the UN from running them is so they could murder more Palestinians coming to the food centers. This is exactly what they did in the genocide in Srebrenica. In that case, it wasn't Israel, it was the Serbs. They would set up food, they would starve the population and then set up food centers so when the civilians showed up, they would get to shoot them easier. And you know what the Israeli excuse is for murdering people at the food centers? Well, they got close to the Israeli troops. That's because the Israeli troops killed everyone who was distributing food outside of them. And they're like, come here, little Palestinians. That's it. Mow them down and slaughter them. But we're
Okay, this kind of hyperbole doesn't help. But that's okay. We're here to watch the Spurg out, so we'll let it watch. The IDF contention is that they're doing security for 1 hour is not enough for food distribution for a population of 2.2 million people. Okay, it's just not. And so 1 hour for food distribution, if that's true, that is crazy pants. So imagine having 1 hour every single day to line up with 2 million other people in order to go get food. That's crazy pants. Then the argument is that the IDF is effectively playing red light, green light, where if you try to set up in order to get food not at the designated hour, then they'll shoot you. And then also if you approach it after the time is up, like let's say you're starving, you're about to fall over because you're so hungry, and you get in line for food, but then the 1 hour window where you can get food dissipates. And so your choices are get shot or starve. Like you might stay in line at the risk of getting shot. So yeah, so if these are the conditions that the IDF is inflicting on the Gazan population, then they can freak out. But I do think that the pulling the Vosh memes and being like, they just mow them all down. It's like, all right, bro, who are you helping? I don't think you're helping anybody by communicating this the way that you are.
We're the moral army doing self-defense. No, you're doing a goddamn genocide. And it doesn't make you superior. It definitely doesn't do that. And I know you don't care about civilians if they're not Israeli civilians. That's why you're monsters. Total monsters.
It's amazing how openly they like mock and laugh at the slaughter of innocent people. But okay, Constantine.
When you laugh at a genocide, you are by definition a monster. So don't tell me about any of this crap. And I don't want to hear about anything else anymore about how Israel is the victim. Israel is not within a billion miles of being a victim. They are
the very R-slurred moral analysis, Chank. Like, the civilians on October 7th can be victims, and the people being genocided in Gaza or getting shot in Gaza as they're trying to get food can be victims. Both of them can be victims simultaneously. Matter of fact, denying their victimhood is what perpetuates the cycle of violence. Very stupid analysis.
Since 1948, they have attacked all of their neighbors and taken more and more land. That is an absolute certain fact. But they lie to you and they go, oh no, it was the terrorists. That they made us take their land. They made us take Gaza. They made us take a huge chunk of the West Bank. They made us go into southern.
Starrock said, I had to leave halfway through the debate yesterday. How did the rest of it go? Pretty good. I mean, we agreed on descriptive reality as far as like what's going to happen in order to predict socialism if it was to ever occur. However, I just think that there's forces that are going to make socialism. I don't think it's ever going to work, basically. Even if we agree on like descriptions of reality, I don't think it's ever going to actually be implemented.
Lebanon. They made us go into Western Syria. They made us attack Iran. They didn't make you do any of that. You're an aggressive imperial empire, slaughtering people, committing genocide, so you could have more land. And you could easily do that because you manipulated all of our politicians. You bought them through AIPAC. And no, I don't care what you say. You definitely bought them. That's exactly what AIPAC did. And anyone who's a fool enough to tell you, no, AIPAC gave out hundreds of millions of dollars, but it didn't affect our politicians. You would have to be a moron of the highest order to say that. You'd have to be the dumbest person in the whole planet to say our crook politicians took hundreds of millions of dollars from AIPAC, but it didn't affect them? Come on, who could be that stupid? Oh, I know, every single mainstream media reporter in America. Every single one of them lies to you on purpose and says, no, AIPAC doesn't have any influence. AIPAC, how do you say it? Anti-Semite. No, you guys are anti-Palestinian, anti-Muslim racists and bigots. You don't care about Muslim lives. You don't.
Oh my God. This is like the Sam Harris thing. All right, I'm gonna point this out to you. Sorry, I've been kind of tuning them out and reading chat because this kind of hyperbole doesn't really, I don't know, it turns me off, I guess. So, but I want to point out at least something to you, okay? If you're Muslim, God bless you, okay? You believe in God, the last day, you believe that Muhammad is God's messenger, and you want to do good works. Those are the four things that I know are required in order to be Muslim. And then you're supposed to go on the Hajj if you can. I think you're supposed to pay your taxes. the tithe, whatever their version of tithing is, and take care of like widows and orphans and stuff. Like there's like very basic Muslim tenets of faith that allow you to believe in like a monotheist God. So I don't care about that. If you're like a normie Muslim, nominal Muslim, I don't care. Good for you. Don't care. Whenever you scream racist, okay, I immediately tune out. Okay. And the reason why I tune out is because, number one, Islam isn't a race. It's a belief system. It's an ideology. All right. So there's people in Morocco who are Bedouin. Well, actually, in North Africa, I should be more general. In North Africa, there's Bedouins in the Arabian Peninsula. There's Tuareg in North Africa. There's Mediterraneans. There's all sorts of different ethnicities who are all Muslim. And as a matter of fact, you get pissed when we mix them up. When we call everybody Arab, you get pissed. So don't say it's racism. It's not racism. It could be bigotry against religion. It could be religious bigotry. Then, same thing. It goes on a belt. Like Malaysians are Muslim, right? If I was being bigoted towards a Malaysian Muslim, I don't think you would consider that the same racism as bigotry towards like an Arab Muslim or a Tuareg Muslim, right? So number one, just say bigotry. It's easier. Number two, the bigotry is rooted in a real problem. And the real problem is that jihadist terrorism is real. In the Middle East and North Africa, jihadist terrorism kills the shit out of Muslims way more than Western coalition forces do. Not only does it kill the shit out of Muslims way more than Western coalition forces do, but also those same jihadist organizations come into the West and commit terrorist attacks that then get more Western coalition forces all up in your shit. And I'm sorry to say it, this is more of just like a descriptive part of reality. Middle East and North Africa is filled with energy, okay? You're sitting on 2/3 of the world's proven oil reserves. We want to buy it from you. So if you sell it to us, no problems. We're going to be friends. If you don't sell it to us, we're going to come in and we're going to fight you until you sell it to us. So it seems like there's going to be a choice here. We can be friends and be in business together. You can sell your oil. You can improve your societies. You can do whatever you want with the money. Westerners, generally speaking, don't care what happens in the Middle East and North Africa. And then Western societies are going to buy the petroleum, and then we can all move on. The other option is you say, well, Christians and secular atheists from the Western world realistically are kind of like scumbags, and they don't actually believe in their faith because they're secular. So not only do we have geopolitical grievances for them interfering with our governments in reference to oil, but also we have like a religious supremacy over Jews, Christians, and atheists. And so we're going to use that as a pretext to kill dozens of civilians. That's another option. But if you do that option, expect us to kill you. I mean, that's really it. Like I hate to be so callous about it, but descriptively, that's just true. It's just true. Checking in with chat because I love you guys. Jonah Boy says you can probably click inspect elements and bypass. You guys are such cowards. Oh no, they have my email. Gen X says, I just tried 5 super chats and it won't effing work. Well, I appreciate the effort and the energy. Kay says, but we don't know that this is true. Right. And some people are saying that Sen Patty, or somebody said, it wasn't Sen Patty, don't blame them. They said that Haaretz is pretty far left, so take what they say with a bucket of salt. I have no idea, guys. I'm not there. I didn't see it. I didn't talk to the soldier. He said some things that kind of give me a yellow flag about his testimony, but I don't know. I'm not IDF. I'm not in Gaza, right? Gnarly Bones Full says that was close to a Vosh Simon Says clip. Exactly, Gnarly Bones. Exactly. Gen X for $2. Read my regular chat. Don't pay for access. Okay, I didn't. I just gave them my email. Thomas Martinson says Serbs killed way more people in a couple of months than the Israelis have killed this entire war, which is another thing that kind of cuts against the genocide narrative. That's why I don't think this hyperbole helps. I think just being descriptive about reality helps. Starhawk says, yeah, I'm going to need evidence for any of this. Sure. You would think that there would be cell phone footage. So Thomas Martinson says Haaretz has put out some erroneous stuff. Okay. Bo Dickerson says, when you laugh at a genocide, guy who named his company after a genocidal group. Listen, that's such an old talking point, and they built so much of their branding off of it for so long, and it doesn't resonate with a Western audience. So that's not like a talking point that, like, you know, in the 1920s, the Young Turks were a progressive political group that genocided the Armenians. Okay. It's bad. Got it. Understood. Yeah. Karen Mosley says, the brown buffalo is having a normal one. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. All right. Anyways, let's get back to it.
We don't care about Muslim lives at all. So when Palestinians are slaughtered, what is it going to take? 18,000 kids? 180,000 kids? You don't care about them at all. Whenever Israel slaughters, you go, terrorists, they had it coming. And you do their propaganda for self-defense. 2 years later, in self-defense, they declared in their cabinet that they're taking all of Gaza. It was always about the land. Does anybody on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News say that? No, they never say it. They lie to you on purpose to help Israel steal more land in the Middle East, and they claim it's self-defense. Self-defense, my ass. It's a goddamn genocide. And yes, Muslim lives matter. We're also human beings.
All right, just taking like a little emotional break here, just because he's going quite hard, which is fine. You can. This would be like if Irish people were getting gunned down by British forces, and then I was freaking out and spurging out about it. It's the same thing to him, right? So for like 2 centuries, in the 19th century, the English monocrop policy in Ireland created the blight, which wiped out the potato crops, which killed hundreds of thousands of Irish people. And despite there being enough agricultural production within Ireland to feed the domestic population, there were Darwinian arguments that, well, Irish people tend to have a lot of kids, so we need to cull their population anyways, so we'll just let them die. And so they let hundreds of thousands of Irish people starve in like the early and middle 19th century. And that actually spurred a lot of the Irish immigration to the United States, was actually the mistreatment by the English. And then throughout the 20th century, they fought over Northern Ireland versus Ireland, where I think Ireland gained its independence in the early 20th century. And then they kept fighting for Northern Ireland throughout the late 20th century. But Northern Ireland was majority Protestant, and they were large loyalist militias. And so there was terrorist violence throughout the late 20th century. So if there was an incident where a segment of Ireland had been blown up, 80% of the buildings had been destroyed, and the people were starving, and then they were forced to aid distribution centers, and then if they showed up at the wrong location at the wrong time, they got gunned down, then maybe I would be this passionate. I don't know. I can be sympathetic while still thinking that this is crazy and counterproductive. Reading a super chat because I'm right next to it. Grassroots for $20. Thank you, King. Good to see you. Just to be clear, Chank doesn't even feel this way. He's a liar. He professionally lies loudly for money. He's only slightly better than his false nephew. Well, good news for you is we'll be watching his nephew in a second. Shadow Bravo says, good morning, Connor. Good morning to you. All right, let's try to get through this without losing our minds.
Only human beings on this planet aren't Israelis. They're not some special benighted superhumans. Oh my God, if they die, we all have to say, oh, we bow down to you. But if Muslims die, right? That's what American media does. That's what American politicians do. I'm so sick of our lives not mattering. I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of everyone has to grovel to Israel. But the minute you ask someone, can you be a decent human being and care about the Palestinians? They go, anti-Semite. No, F you. You're the one who hates Muslims. And
bruh, this is like an Alex Jones tier crash out.
American media, you are guilty. You're the ones who got the whole country, my whole life, to hate me, to hate my Muslim family, to hate all Muslims across the world. You're the sick sons of bitches that called us terrorists when it was Israel attacking, when it was Israel taking land, when it was Israel.
I'm going to be real, Chank. It wasn't the American media that made me Islamophobic. It was the 9/11 terror attacks. It was finding out the history of Saddam Hussein and all the evil shit that he did to the Shia and to the Kurds. It was serving in the war on terror and seeing what jihadists were doing to the civilian population. As an example, in 2008, when I was in country, they went to a mental hospital, kidnapped people who had Down syndrome, put suicide bombs on them, walked them into a pet bazaar, and detonated the vest, killing dozens of people and animals. Listen, I know that I should care about people, and I do, obviously. but I can't imagine how fucked up it is to be like a parrot in a pet bazaar in Iraq, just chilling, minding your own fucking business, and then you get ripped to shit by shrapnel because some dickhead jihadist puts on a suicide belt onto a person with Down syndrome. It's like, what the fuck did I do, right? As a parrot, you know, I didn't do shit. So anyways, pretty fucked up. And then also the fact that, you know, the Shia, when we left, created political intrigue that kicked the Sunni out of the government, that allowed the people who did work with Western coalition forces to be butchered by ISIS militants. And then when the ISIS militants seized Mosul, the Shia militias and government forces ran away. Then they had to fight a decade-long battle that we only became involved with once the Bataclan truck attack and the Bastille truck attack, or not Bastille truck attack, but the Bastille Day truck attack. The Bataclan terrorist attack and the Bastille truck attack, that made me Islamophobic, not going to lie. And then, what's another one? Pulse nightclub happened 20 minutes away from my house. The Boston Marathon bombing happened in the city of my birth. All those made me Islamophobic. So it's not the American media that, you know, created distrust or hatred or fear of Muslims. And by the way, I have Muslim friends. I love Muslims. So I'm not saying that I'm permanently an Islamophobe, but I'm just saying it's not because of the American media, man. Like Fox News didn't make me, you know, distrust or fear Muslim people. It was jihadism. Jihadism made me fearful and distrustful and maybe a little bit hateful at times. So I feel like this is cope. Shoutout Bravo says, good morning, Connor. Good morning to you. The Crawling Chaos says, hey, Helldivers, we just got a new cape, the review bomb cape. Yeah, so Crawling Chaos, I want to shout this out real quick. So Philip Coffey is pretty serious about getting a gaming group together for Helldivers. And so there has to be a half dozen people who are into Helldivers in the server. And I kind of would love it if there was like a Saturday night gaming voice chat where we just set up the expectation that at like 9 p.m. on Saturday, anybody who was available to either do co-op on Space Marine 2 or Helldivers hung out together. I think that would be dope. So we'll see if we can promote that internally. Kay says, look, I don't want to be somebody who blindly supports Israel, but there's so many lies that it's hard for me to believe things without more proof. Same. Ryazel says, what's your view on birthright citizenship? I think service should guarantee citizenship. I think you should have to I think at minimum you should have to pass like a multiple choice exam. Like effectively every citizen should have to pass a citizen's exam. And then if you wanted to add in 4 years or 2 years of public service where you either work for the post office or the Marine Corps or the Peace Corps, I would do that 100%. DD22E says, but they did, though. You would think a Turk would want to distance themselves from that as much as possible. Well, a little late. They kind of built their branding on it. Desolate Mirror says Serbian war criminals are still being tried for crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. So I'm not sure that's a great comparison. Sure. All right. Anyways, let's continue the cringe. Let's go for it. Bo Dickerson says a media company called the Hitler Youth shouldn't be controversial. Listen, if they brand themselves the Hitler Youth and 90% of people don't care, and then they have that branding for a decade, it's a business choice at the end of the day.
Israel slaughtering is slaughtering. How many times? Every war, Israel kills 100 times the civilians. This time they kill 1,000 times the civilians. Doesn't count, doesn't count. What does the American media say in their infinite racism? They say it's always...
It's not racism. It's anti-religious bigotry.
The Muslims' fault. It's always the Palestinians' fault. They say stupid crap like, oh no, the Palestinians can't govern themselves. They're violent, terrorist savages. They can never govern themselves. They're inferior to the Israelis. You don't say that, but you imply that every time. What, the Palestinians are the only...
Okay, then I'll go ahead. Sorry, real quick. Shoutout Bravo says that old talking point is BS, Connor. You won't allow someone say that if their channel was named the SS, where a German denied the Holocaust. Yeah, I would. Nick Fuentes denies the Holocaust all the time. I don't think that his branding around Christian nationalism or trying to revivify Hitler is what's particularly offensive to me. What's offensive to me is that he wants to reinstitute it in the modern day. I don't think that Cenk Uygur wants to reinstitute the Armenian genocide. You know what I'm saying? Anyways.
only people on earth who can't govern themselves? No, you're deeply racist if you say that. Do you understand? No, every cable news anchor, every reporter at the New York Times, every reporter at the Washington Post, you're all deeply racist against Muslims. And you have
Again, religious bigotry, not racism, Cenk. You need to update your talking points. This isn't 2012.
gotten this country to hate us. It's totally your fault. And you've got
No, it's not. It's jihadist terrorists' fault. The coverage of Israel is not what made me hateful of jihadists. It was, you know what it was? I'll tell you another thing that it was. It was watching like civilians. It was watching Coptic Christians getting their throats cut with like dull knives on a beach in Egypt. That's one of the things that made me very hateful of jihadists. It was watching ISIS take toddlers, literally 3 or 4 years old, and giving them pistols and forcing them to execute grown men. You can watch this video if you want. Imagine a 4-year-old child being given a live weapon and then being forced to shoot an adult human being in the head. That radicalized me against jihadism. It was the Yazidi sex slaves, the women who refused to marry ISIS members. It was them getting put in a cage and burned alive. Oh, no, drowned. Excuse me. They were drowned. It was a Jordanian pilot or an Egyptian pilot. Because he fired Hellfire missiles, they burned him alive in a cage. That was all the stuff that radicalized me against jihadism. You know, that was the stuff that made me distrustful of Muslims who were sympathetic to jihadists. So again, it wasn't American media, Cenk. I think you're missing the point.
gotten the country to believe that 1.6 billion Muslims are America's enemies, that we're the violent savages. You're sick. You're
Sorry, what?
And you've gotten the country to believe that 1.6 billion Muslims are America's enemies, that we're the violent savages.
Then call out and eliminate the jihadists instead of sweeping for them, Chank.
You're sick. You're disgusting. I can't stand it anymore. Can you, for once in your life, treat a Muslim life the same as an Israeli life?
Yeah, I tried to.
And the answer for mainstream media in America is hell no. They're never going to do it. Never. They hate Muslims and they drive hatred towards Muslims because Israel needs more land. They need more of Gaza. Are you going to report accurately that they voted to take Gaza? It was never about self-defense. They took Gaza. They voted on that. Have you said it? No, I mentioned it on page A17, but I don't want anybody to find out Israel's the aggressor. Israel's a moral army. Israel's doing self-defense. So,
okay, I'm gonna give a Israeli talking point real quick. You know, Israel map at its peak. So what happened throughout the years was Israel attacked and was counterattacked multiple times by its neighbors, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt. There was multiple times where all 3 or 4 armies were attacking Israel at one time. And so Israel actually kicked the shit out of all 4 of these dudes. I don't think Saudi ever did active military campaign, but I could be wrong. But I think Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt launched like a simultaneous war. And so what ended up happening was Israel gained the Sinai, control of the West Bank, and control of Gaza. So technically, at that point, 73 to 79, they could have just done the ethnic cleansing then. And by the way, I'm not saying they're not doing like a slow rolling settling and displacement and ethnic cleansing of Gaza and the West Bank. That's totally possible. But I'm just saying that you have to reflect history accurately, that 67 to 73, they controlled all of this territory and they conceded the Sinai back to Egypt for peace. And then they also conceded parts of the West Bank and Gaza back to Palestinian control, not necessarily for peace, but probably because they couldn't do what they're doing now, where they effectively, I'm just going to say it, I feel like they waited for Gaza to attack. That way they would have the moral pretext to do what they're doing now. I know some Israelis might disagree with that, but the fact that, you know, he's mischaracterizing history is also cringe. Very cringe, Cenk. Very cringe.
Dirty Muslims that are attacking. I'm sick of it.
No, nobody's saying that shit. You're literally imagining that shit.
F all of you in American media. F all of you for driving that hatred against 1.5 billion people, all to serve your beloved Israel. I know I'm the one who's being terrible anti-Semite. How could you say something against Israel? Israel is the Jew.
Nobody's saying that shit. No, like nobody except for like hardcore evangelicals, conservatives are saying that shit.
Jewish state, the greatest state of all, right? I don't care that they're Jewish. I wish they weren't. I wish they had a safe haven for Jews that didn't constantly attack their neighbors.
It's called
that
America.
didn't occupy their neighbors. I want a safe haven, but they don't
Randy Chang says man's heart stent is about to pop out. Yeah.
want a safe haven. They want more land. It's called Greater Israel. It's a map that hangs in their cabinet. It's not like they're hiding it. Why don't you report it? Because
Ooh. Let's take a look at that. Israeli cabinet, Greater Israel map. Holy shit. Oh my God. Are you serious? What? What? Okay. Yeah, this is something where we should probably call out Israel a little bit, although I would love some context. These feel like photoshops. I feel like these are photoshops where Gulf countries condemn Israel map claiming historical territorial rights for Israel. Yeah, that's crazy. Is this real? I'm definitely going to read these two things. So let me go ahead and set the backdrop for you a little bit, okay? In the Old Testament, Abraham gets promised, I think it's Abraham. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong in chat. But Abraham is obviously like the founder of the religion. He's the person who first believes in like a monotheist God. And so I think it's estimated that he existed more than 3,200 years ago. You know, maybe 1500 before AD, or excuse me, 1500 BC or like 2000 BC. But either way, Abraham is the founder of the religion, and he has a vision from God where his descendants will outnumber the stars, and that he will occupy the land between the Nile and the Euphrates. And so for those of you who don't know, the Nile is in Egypt and the Euphrates is in Iraq. So that's just like all like referential crap. And if you think about it, from an Abrahamic descendant perspective, this has come true. Because if you consider Muslims to be descendants of, the Abrahamic faith, then yeah, that's like 4 billion people. If you think about Christians being an Abrahamic faith, then, you know, it's like 4 out of 7 billion people. Sorry if I misquoted the population stats incorrectly, but 4 out of 7 billion people on the planet follow an Abrahamic faith, which is a shitload, right? So the argument is that Israel secretly wants to reconstitute this manifest destiny promised to Abraham. But the truth about it is that's wildly impractical, because that would include colonizing parts of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria, and Iraq. And they don't have the population or military to reinstitute that. So it's kind of like a manifest destiny for Israeli schizos to go after the Greater Israel project. But there are Israelis who genuinely believe that. So let's go ahead and see how much of the government believes in the Greater Israel Project based off of a cursory Google research. Doha, Qatar. Gulf countries, including Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia, strongly condemned on Wednesday the publication of an Israeli map claiming historical territorial rights for Israel and Palestine and large parts of Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. Official Israeli social media accounts published a map, that falsely claims that parts of Palestine, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon are within Israel's territory. The Qatari Foreign Ministry called the publication of the Israeli map a flagrant violation of international legitimacy resolutions and provisions on international law. A ministry statement said the publication of the alleged map would hinder the chances of peace in the region, particularly amid the ongoing brutal war on the Gaza Strip. It called on the international community to fulfill its legal and moral responsibilities by pressuring the Israeli occupation to comply with international legitimacy resolutions and confront its expansionist ambitions in Arab lands. The UAE Foreign Ministry, for its part, called the Israeli action a deliberate effort to expand the occupation and a blatant violation and contravention of international law. Okay, so they published a map in 2023 that's schizo. I don't know what to do about that. I have no idea. And then look at this. This looks like it's Israel, northern Saudi, and Jordan stretching into Iraq and then Lebanon. So let's go ahead and watch this real quick. Israel's finance minister, for those of you who aren't watching, has provoked outrage after he spoke in Paris behind this map of Greater Israel. Yeah. Okay. And then Smotrich, I guess their finance minister, actually backs the West, what do you call it? The West Bank settlements. Dude, I think the United States has to step up, right? I think they got to step up. It's very obvious that anti-Semitic attacks are not justified in the United States, that just killing random Jewish civilians is evil. It's very clear that October 7th was an evil project, but I think the United States needs to step up and needs to say, here's the line in Gaza, here's the line in the West Bank, and if you don't like it, you can pound sand and you're not doing it with our help. That's actually, sorry, that's kind of like obvious to me that if there are legitimate expansionist Israeli government elements in power, then the United States shouldn't be a part of it. We can prevent their elimination, where if Israel gets invaded, we will back the state of Israel, but I'm not interested in being a part of an expansionist Israeli, military campaign. I'm good. I understand that might be too much nuance for chat, where I'm kind of whiplashing you, where we're simultaneously saying that Cenk Uygur is going too far with it and getting too crazy with it, but simultaneously we shouldn't be supporting genocide. I understand that might be like, oh, I hate Cenk Uygur. Oh, hold on, we got to restrain Israel. But as 3,000 IQ geniuses, I expect you to keep up with that perspective.
No, anti-Semitic. That's an excuse they use to drive hatred towards Muslims so that Israel can accomplish their objectives. And I'm just, as you can tell, had all I could take.
Yeah,
you know what happened, Anna, sorry.
Same.
So one of our members, History Speaks, wrote in about this story that just came out in the last hour in the Washington Post. I couldn't believe it, so I looked it up. It's true. Sorry, guys. Obviously, I'm enraged here. I got to a point where I can't take it anymore. Does my life matter? Does my life matter? Does my family's life matter? Okay.
Yes, Chank, relax. Holy shit.
Here's what Israel did according to the Washington Post in Iran. There's an audio recording that the Washington Post has gotten. It says in the recording that Israeli intelligence calls Iranian generals, and they say, I can advise you now, you have 12 hours to escape with your wife and child. Otherwise, you're on the list right now, on our list right now. And an Israeli intelligence operative told a senior Iranian general close to the country's rulers, according to the audio recording. The operative then suggested that Israel could train weapons on the general and his family at any moment. Quote, we're closer to you than your own neck vein. Put this in your head. May God protect you, he said. So look, you want to do psyops? You want to
Why? Okay, giving your enemy a heads up. Okay.
threaten their generals? I get it. You call up and say, we're going to murder your children. You know what? Who does that? Terrorists do that.
Okay.
Absolute stone cold terrorists do that. And have they murdered their children? Yes. I mean, in Gaza, there's 17,000 dead kids. And in Iran, do you know that they murdered their scientists in front of a kindergarten earlier? They have no qualms. They murder civilians, they murder scientists, they murder kids. They murdered over 200 innocent civilians in their first bombing raid. But with American media, it never matters because those are just Muslim lives. And you could threaten to murder Muslim children, and as long as it's beloved moral army Israel, they'll still say, oh, it's great, it's wonderful, they're our special ally. So no, that is not a special ally. It is a despicable government, despicable. I wondered what I would have done if I was around during the Holocaust. I do not wonder anymore. I would have fought it with everything I had. And as the
Yelling on YouTube is not everything you have, Cenk. It's not.
media probably would have said, well, look, the Germans had to defend themselves. They had to defend themselves. It's the fault.
I mean, that's what German media did say.
Of the other people. They were threatening Germany's expansion. And Germany had to expand for self-defense. And that is what they said, that it was for self-defense. And so I'm sick of your expansion. I'm sick of your wars. And I'm sick of us having to pay for all of your atrocities. Every time you ring the...
All right, let's summarize that real quick and then let's engage with chat. So I do find it cringe that, you know, Chank kind of freaked out in that way and took all that kind of stuff, but I can sympathize, right? The reason why I can sympathize is because of, you know, my Irish ethno-religious heritage and the persecution of Catholics and people of Irish ancestry in their homeland. So I can sympathize with that. I could also sympathize with kind of freaking out that the American media or Western media, they'll watch a few hundred or a few thousand Muslims die and they'll just go, you know, they'll shrug their shoulders. But what I would put back to Chank is the fact that what is it, like 500,000? You know, he keeps quoting 17,000 kids, 17,000 kids, 17,000 kids. Well, how many people got wiped out in Syria? I'm pretty sure it's around 500,000 in the Syrian civil war. And that wasn't Western coalition forces. We were supporting the rebels against Bashar al-Assad. And Bashar al-Assad is the person who wiped out probably 300,000, 400,000 of his own people. Now, I'm sure you've probably criticized that, but I didn't see a breathless, sweaty, screaming, you know, analysis of Syria pop up on my newsfeed. I haven't seen that. Maybe it exists, but I haven't seen it. And then same thing with Iraq. You lay all of the war dead of Iraq, which the counted is 200,000, but you claim it's 1 million. You lay all of the war dead at the United States foot's doorstep, but when you actually look at the casualties, what happened? The United States went in, they deposed a dictator responsible for slaughtering his own civilian Shia population and his own Kurdish population. And then it became a ethno-religious civil war between Shia and Sunni, and they wiped each other out. And the United States was trying to stop the civil war, and they died in order to try to stop the civil war. Thousands of Americans died trying to stop the civil war. And then when we left, it was still a civil war, and they still killed the shit out of each other. And again, I don't see breathless condemnation, sweaty, tearful, breathless condemnation of the jihadist organizations. And whenever it comes to a white Westerner such as myself saying, hey, how come you don't carry this energy for jihadist organizations? You say, oh, the geopolitics, oh, the history of the region. You just have to understand. You have like a 3,000 IQ analysis of Islamist and jihadist organizations to the point that, I'm not going to lie, it borderline feels like you're excusing the way that they operate. But when it comes to Western forces, number one, all of the blood is laid at their doorstep. Number two, they're genocidal freaks and monsters. Number three, how dare we be critical and or hostile to Islamist and jihadist organizations? I'm sympathetic. I think it's cringe, and I do think to some degree it's hypocritical. Let's check in with chat. All right. Bye, guys. Have a beautiful day.